everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining our last plenary. My name is Tapio Varis and I will be moderating. We will have distinguished speakers. Yes, I have the mic in my hand anyway. Doesn't work. This one works? Yes, now it works. Closer. Thank you. Let me only say in opening that this plenary is organized by UNESCO, and particularly UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education. It is one of the 8 UNESCO official institutes. It's part of UNESCO, and we are very grateful for the institute to organize this panel, this plenary, and also contributing to this conference. I just want to say before I open the session that UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education is located, the headquarters in Moscow, but it has a global mandate. And for example, the book that I presented yesterday, the Media Literacy and New Humanism, was published by the Institute some years ago. It has this media and information literacy is one of the priorities of the Institute. So it's very relevant and we are very thankful and thank you for, I'm very honored to open this panel. I thought that since we are coming to the closing of the conference, that we will not use too much time for presentations, but each of the speakers, we have 4 speakers, will have about 15 minutes, and we will leave the questions and answer session to the end. We will see how much energy we still have, but we will first listen to the speakers. And let us begin with Tatiana Murovana. She is from the Institute. She is a program specialist, and she is working on these issues in Moscow, in the headquarters, but of course all around the world. So Tatiana, пожалуйста.
No? Oh, yes. Thank you for coming to our session, plenary session. And first of all, I would like to thank to Mr. Ramon Tuazon, to all AMIC colleagues who was working hard on the preparation of the conference and of our MIL session. And thank you for, I would like to thank the university for hosting the conference. The title of my presentation resonates with Professor Varis' keynote speech we enjoyed yesterday morning. I'm convinced that fostering people's cognitive and behavioral autonomy is one of the most important and most challenging tasks for media and information literacy nowadays. Why is it so important? There is at least one fundamental distinction between current information and communication ecosystem and the one we used to live in before. The distinction is automatization of decision-making process. According to Jack Bolkin from Yale University, we have now moved from early days of the internet to the algorithmic society. The algorithmic society features the use of algorithms, artificial intelligence agents, and big data to govern populations. It also features digital infrastructure companies, large multinational social media platforms, search engines that define and control the ways we see the world and communicate with each other. The algorithmic society presents a number of problems for free speech, ability of nation states to regulate the digital world, and ability of individuals to exercise choice and freedoms. Setting aside the issue of definition what artificial intelligence actually is, we see that AI-based algorithms fueled by big data became the main decision maker that transforms and even radically changes the way we communicate. It's AI who decides what we see in the search results, what we see in the feed. It's AI who decides what kind of content we watch and people to contact we see in the recommendations. It's AI who evokes the mob-like behavior in people and is getting us in intrusive online habits. It's AI who, for example, we don't talk on our smartphones as much as talk to it, thanks to AI. AI produces content, creates art, disseminates it, and disseminates it at a much larger scale that we could on our own. By the way, there is just narrow AI for the moment, but the time of general artificial intelligence and super artificial intelligence is coming. That kind of AI might have minds of their own and have notions of purposes and goals. Last year, the Pew Research Center published the paper on the impact of advances in AI on the essential elements of being human. The paper reports that experts interviewed during the research expressed their worries about the following. Algorithms are not neutral. They replicate and reinforce biases. People are losing control over their lives as decision-making in digital systems is automatically seeded to code-driven black box tools. Most AI is controlled by companies or governments whose focus is on profits and on power, and not on human-centered values and ethics. People's deep and dependence on machine-driven networks will erode their abilities to think for themselves, take action independent of automated systems, and interact effectively with each other. Thinking about all these challenges, we should bear in mind that AI-based algorithms support authoritarian forms of governance technology, and means to use them have fallen into the hands of a select few organizations. Dr. Amy Webb calls these organizations G-Mafia and BAT, B-A-T, that are American, thank you, and Chinese accordingly. What is to be done in this situation? Before our economic and political systems are reinvented to better help humans in expanding their capacities and capabilities, before people join forces to innovate widely accepted approaches aimed at open, decentralized, and intelligent networks, sound a bit utopian, isn't it? We should raise awareness and educate people in order to help them understand how modern information and communication systems work and how to deal with it. This idea is actually nothing new. Nearly all the documents relating to ethical reflection on AI and its application contain items promoted awareness raising and education activity. You see some of the documents. However, what the subject of this activity, which is proposed in the document, that is either general words about necessity of digital skills or education aimed at facilitating people's participation in economic and social life and people's interaction with technologies. The documents don't provide for skills how to exercise free will in a situation when the matrix is gradually emerging. We so-called digital migrants are able to identify and override the matrix effects with difficulty. But younger generations, they are born into this technological era, and the algorithmic architecture of communication is natural and only possible for them. What makes the matrix behind communication hard to reflect on. Thus, we need special training focused on how the matrix works and how to retain our mental and behavioral autonomy. This leads us, finally, to media and information literacy. The conventional notion of MIL promoted by UNESCO is the following. Media and information literacy is a composite set of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and practices that allow effectively access, analyze, critically evaluate, interpret, use, create, and disseminate information and media products with use of existing means and tools on a creative, legal, and ethical basis. Although these skills are important, there are increasingly fewer pieces of information in the net that could be accessed, analyzed, critically evaluated, interpreted, used, created, and disseminated, as it's mentioned in the UNESCO's definition of MIL. Digital content is packed into the services which guide users to do what they are supposed to do, not what they want to do, not what they need to do, just what they are supposed to do, to part with their time, their attention, and money, to share their personal data and digital footprints, click to the links they have no real need to click, and so on. The algorithms and interfaces much more strongly determine our behavior on the net than we think they do. Technologies impose on us new habits, more and more. Black boxes shape our future, both as individuals and as society. The more information about us is available online, the more we can be exploited or manipulated through social engineering, identity theft, stalking, or harassment. It's becoming evident that we should reconceptualize the meal-related set of competences and attitudes in order to train people on how to manage their attention, how to manage their behavior and data, how to hack or at least identify and minimize the damage of algorithmic biases, personalization effects, filter bubbles, and echo chambers. In this spirit, we would like to suggest including into media and information literacy education programs the cultural, economic, and even biochemical dimensions, and Mohammed is going to talk a bit more about this, dimensions of software as a universal engine which the world runs on. Given that, according to new media theorist Lev Manovich, the software is the message. Thus, the communication process that is the main subject of research and teaching for MIL specialists should be studied and taught at three interconnected dimensions or layers: media, text, media tools and channels, and software or technology. In this regard, special attention should be paid to the practical ability of individuals to raise sovereignty related to the information and communication sphere. Be able to focus on achieving perceived goals while ignoring non-thematic media procedures, media messages. That includes the ability to manage attention, the most valuable treasure and demanded commodity nowadays. Interact with and to be a part of media flow on our own rules and not on someone else's rules. Be able to shape autonomously our lives in the world of modern technologies. And from that exact perspective, Institute UNESCO for Information Technologies and Education, UNESCO IITE, is elaborating the mobile learning tools for meal-related professional development of teachers and educators. Our purpose is to complement and to extend UNESCO's curriculum for teachers, published in 2012. New subject areas covered are digital media environment, critical analysis and evaluation of media content and communication channels, societal, political, and economic aspects of media communication, algorithms, interfaces, and communication scenarios of digital services and platforms, cognitive biases and media communication, and digital hygiene. The pilot version of the e-learning course has been designed in the Russian language. I hope that we could present the first results of the project early next year. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. I'm sure there are many questions, but as we agreed, we will have the questions and answers session at the end of the 4 presentations, because they are a little bit overlapping and they could give some answers to the questions you might have. We move on to the next speaker, distinguished colleague from Egypt, Mohammed El Kindi, who is a cyber security expert and consultant for many organizations, and we are very happy to have you. We already heard you yesterday, but he will have his connection and moving around the place. Thank you, and the floor is yours. Shukran.
Thank you very much, as Chair. Thank you for EMIC again, and thank you for the university for hosting this very important conference today. We will add a new perspective to the MIL. So we are speaking today about the addiction aspect of technology, and this is one of the most important things that most people are talking about. But the problem is there is no concrete evidence maybe about how this technology is being designed. Is it really working on our vulnerabilities? Is it working on our psychological inner vulnerabilities? Let's see. So today, I want to ask if we are using the technology, or is it the technology using us? This is a question need to be discussed together. The other thing is, can we leave these devices for 1 week and doing an internet detox or something like this? Can we do this? Yes, you can, but not all of us can do this. So sure, you can do this, but not all of us can do this. So okay, so I get some statistics from BAW research also, and there is all of the resource and references of this presentation is available. So I will share it with Ramon, and also anyone can get it. So as you see, the 44 people of teens check their phones as soon as they wake up. By the way, it's not only teens, by the way, all of us. Yeah? Yeah, yeah. Low figure, yes. This is low figure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I tried to be moderate, by the way, to find something moderate. So this is also another statistics about the behavior, you know, of the teens. 67 of teens check their phones every 15 minutes. This is also, I think it's higher. So 50 of them get an anxiety when they cannot. Yes, most of them are like this. Try to get the phone out of them, and you will see different things happen to them, especially when you are dealing with young students. And this has happened, really. So also this thing, I think all of you experiences this thing. This is called something in psychology called phantom vibration syndrome. This is when you feel or you think that your phone is ringing or vibrating, but as reality is not doing anything. You just you just get it out of your pocket and oh my God, doesn't do anything. Yeah, this is because that your brain is currently wired to the device. Really, it's wired to the device. Why and how? This is what we are going to discuss right now. So the WHO just announced that there is something called mental disorder from gaming, especially gaming. And I think you heard about this a lot in China, and there is a lot of rehabilitation centers for gaming disorder and all those things. But you know, I will not go into the debate or the scientific debate about is this a real addiction or this is a behavioral addiction. This is a big topic that we can spend you know, days to discuss this topic. But anyway, it's now announced officially by the WHO that there is something called behavioral addiction of game or gaming disorder. So there is some signs you can see for the gaming disorders. They have isolation, they have depression, they have also an anxiety. These things you can notice when you are dealing with young generations who are working heavily with games. So how technology hijacks our minds? So this is the most important question. How those people are managed to play with our minds? How those people are managed to play with our inner demons, as Facebook just stated yesterday. We discussed this. It's all coming back to the role of behavioral psychology. It's not about technology, by the way. It's coming back to psychology, because when you see this shot from the Lord of the Rings movie, you remember this? Yeah, yes, this is our phones. Yes, we deal with our phones like we deal like our precious. Yes. If you lose your phone, your heartbeat will start to be oh, I lose my phone. Yes, it's like this because you become you know, addicted to, you know, this device. Why? Because these psychological theories, it's established and well known. This is came in 1903 by Ivan Pavlov. This is very well known psychological theory. It's called the classical conditioning. I don't know if you are aware of the details of this theory, but the most important thing that you have to notice in this theory is that it's connect or pairs two different stimuli together at the same time, and you don't have a choice. There is always two stimuli connected together. So if you, for example, go to ads and marketing, advertisements, all those things, they are using the same classical conditioning theory to link happiness to a product, to link something to a device, to link watching movie to popcorn, to link something to another thing. There is a stimuli and there is paired together at the same time, and you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. And this is always used in designing some tools and programs in new technology. So the classical condition in your smartphone, the problem is these smartphones are feeding our psychological needs. So they are playing on these psychological needs because it's provide continuous stream of maybe knowledge, information, news, something new that we fear that we are missing. We are missing this thing. So we are trying to figure out where is this new thing. So it's feeding your need. So the repetition of the paired actions, this is the most important thing, because this triggers the stimulation of your brain, because there is two things paired together and it's repeating. So your habits started to form. Either it's bad or good, but there is a habit going on because of the repetition and the paired of the two stimuli together. So think of something like this. When a smartphone rings with the same ringtone as yours, I think you will get out your phone and look at it, because you are looking for your phone is ringing, and the reality is it's not ringing. But your brain is wired to the ringtone, because this is what I mean by classical conditioning in these devices. So now we are going more further with something more advanced in psychology. I think you know Skinner box. Skinner box is a well-known psychological theory also, but it depends on the behavior and the feedback and the reinforcement. So it depends on how you behave with the condition. So if you, for example, let's say I get a rat like this on a box, and rat cannot read, yes? But they can put something like a sign with some writing that's click here to get food. So rat needs food. So he started to look for something that can get the food. Once he finds out that this button will get the food, he will start clicking the button. Once he gets the food, he gets the reward. So he starts again to click the button. The problem is, in this theory, they change the intervals of clicking. Maybe you can click it once, click it two, click it three. So you get different intervals. And also there is an enforcement. So this theory is becoming the new theory that's used now in programming software and apps and also games and in smartphones especially. So our smartphones is becoming our Skinner box, really, because it's also there is a variable reinforcement scheduling in the smartphone, really. So what makes us hooked to these devices is dopamine, because you get a reward. Once you get something very interesting on your smartphone, your brain starts to, the reward system started to give you a dopamine. And this is the most important thing in all those things, the dopamine, the chemical compound of the pleasure, of reward. So those people understand how these things are working. They are using these theories to design these software. So when you are scrolling your Facebook timeline, for example, you are entering something called dopamine loop. You are going out to scroll to get something interesting. You are looking for something. You are looking for your phone to feed your brain. There is something going on. So if you are thinking that there is something going on, your brain started to, send the dopamine messages. That's it, because dopamine is not, is not going on by doing. It's going on by anticipation. Once you think of something, dopamine started to come. That's it. It's not like you are doing something on your phone. It's because you are thinking of there is something new that will be coming to you. Dopamine started to work. And this is the formula they are using. So this phone started to be our slot machine, but it's inside our pocket. It is the same idea, the same algorithm, the same designs that's used in the slot machines to hook people to the machine. It is the same that's used to hook you to the smartphone. Okay? So once you are thinking of what notification you have got in your phone, dopamine works. Once you are thinking that there is something on Instagram, something good about one of my friends, it's dopamine goes on. And etc. That's it. This is a dopamine loop. So there is two important books I want to refer to in this presentations. Once by Professor Sherry Turkle. It's called Alone Together. And this is something we have experience it every day. When you are sitting together on the table, we are not speaking to each other. We're speaking to our phones. That's it, because we are, yes, we are together, but alone. No one is connecting to the social fabric of the society. We are connected to devices. So the other one is by Adam Ghazali and Larry Rosen. It's called the distracted mind. Our brain in the distracted or hyper-connected world. So we have a lot of distraction going on because of these technologies. So I will not, I don't want to spend much time to explain all those things, but you can find those things in the books. So this is a very important book also from one of the guys who worked with Microsoft, Facebook, all the big names that created those software to hook you. The book is called Hooked. It's how to build habit-forming product. I was talking about habit. They are creating habits. They are creating the firmwares and applications that created habits to you because of the dopamine loops that we are talking about. So this is very interesting book, by the way. This guy now authored a new book to teach people how to get out of this loop. So because he discovered this being abused by companies to create this software. Yes. So this is the hook canvas that he created. Is something related to trigger, and there is some action taken, and there is a reward, and there is an investment in the reward to get you inside the loop. Yes, yes. So it's coming to be not a persuasion, but maybe becoming to be an addiction, like the WHO has mentioned. So there is something very interesting. When I tried to look for these theories, I found that there is a center in Stanford University. It's called Center for Captology. Captology is computers as a persuasive technology. It's how to use computer to persuade people to do something. This is very important theory and very important center. By the way, Nir Ayal, the one who authored the book Hooked, graduated from Stanford and studied in the center. So we understand what they are doing with these theories. So this is also a very important resource if you want to read more about how they are using these theories to design this software that gets you hooked. I will quote Paul Graham. I think you know Paul is one of the Silicon Valley's pioneers. He said in 2010, unless the forms of technological progress that produce these things are subject to different laws than technological progress in general, the world will get more addictive in the next 40 years than it did in the last 40. And we are seeing this. New generations are becoming more addicted. And this is very dangerous. So now we are going to something new called the age of trackholism. Trackholism is a new term that's being used because of people who are trying to get connected more with the devices, especially health devices. People need to track their calories, their steps, their workout, all those things. So you got connected with a lot of things. And this becomes the new age of trackholism. And these things will connect people more to the internet. And more behavioral psychology will be played when you are connected more to the internet. Yes. So my recommendation to finalize quickly, there is a policy and strategy recommendations I can say at the end. There is a role for schools and universities in these all dangerous things we are talking about. And we need also to update the media and information literacy curricula to reflect the psychological and economic effect of technology. It's not only the underpinning theories of technology. We need also to add the social and the psychological aspect of these technologies. We also need to implement ethics and law in computer science curricula. There is something I think in need. We need to add this in our curricula of computer science. Okay. So we need also to promote something called ethically aligned design, and this is related to engineering. I'm a senior member in IEEE, which is an institute for electrical engineers. So they have something very important called ethically aligned design guide. So you can take a look at this guide. It's very important, so we need to promote it really. Finally, we need also recommendation at the personal level. So we need the role of the family, We need also balanced screen time for those kids, and also we need to promote real social interaction. I will refer to this manual to one of my friends. It's called the Tools and Reminders for Parents. It's from a center called the Center of Humane Technology. So it's very important to look at this manual. Maybe you can reference it in your discussion with your children, with your young students. It's very important. So I will close with a quote from Neil Postman. Neil Postman is one of the most important scholars I have ever read to. This guy said that our will warn is that we will be overcome by an externally imposed oppression. But in Huxley's, I think you know Aldous Huxley, he said, in Huxley's vision, no big brother is required to deprive people of their autonomy, maturity, and history. As he saw it, people will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that can do their capacities to think. And that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. We will leave the questions to the end, and we move to the next speaker, who is also internationally distinguished expert, Dorothy Corden, also member of governing board of the Institute in Moscow.
So can I see by show of hands how many addicts I have in the room? You know, I mean, it's great. It's like going to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm an addict, and then the plan. First, let me thank the organizers, not just for the wonderful organization of the meeting, but the topic. The topic itself, that we are looking at communication, technology, and new humanism. This has given us the chance to discuss these things. I think that you have to agree with me that there has never been a more important time than now for all of us to start looking at these issues. The issue of what kind of tools we are going to give to all of society. We usually think about training children, but we see from the discussions we've had here that it's not just about children. It is exactly as we put it in SDG 4. It is education for all, lifelong learning, that we now have to realize that we, in a way, have become victims, but we need to take that back. So, for me, information literacy, which is a very problematic term because it has become so vague. Some people call it digital literacy. Some people call it 21st century skills. But the focus has been on using technology effectively. We have not been having the discussion on the larger framework for technology, deciding what kind of technological future that we want. And so far, let me recap a little bit what both Tatiana and Mohammed said. Tatiana was focusing on our autonomy, our capacity to decide for ourselves. At a certain level, so was Mohammed. He is talking about the tools that they use. But let me tell you that Mohammed was scraping the surface. What has happened today is we have developments in cognitive psychology that allow us to see which part of the brain lights up when we do certain things. So when I'm testing my game, I can have my test group and I will have electrodes on their head and I can tell exactly when the centers of their brain that I want to light up actually light up. So it is advances in cognitive psychology that mean today that our best programmers have also got degrees in psychology. Those are the ones who are making the money. And the problem we have, before I go back to the main focus of my intervention, the problem we have is the techniques that are used for making games addictive. They want the game to be addictive so that they get more players, so that they get more profits, because this is what companies do. But then the child who is used to gaming will not be interested in an educational software that is not giving them that same reaction at the level of their brain. And so we are now seeing educational software in our schools which imitate the techniques used for mind control and addiction in the gaming space. How many of you have actually thought about who chooses the educational software that my kid is using in school? How many of you have gone into it and checked it? Show your hands. We assume, one, did you find anything good? But I'm talking about the lowest level. Even 6-year-old kids, 4-year-old kids are being exposed to that kind of technology and addiction. And what we can assume is that soon, when we are having this kind of discussion, it will seem highly irrelevant to these kind of people because it is the new norm. It's the new norm that they've come to assume. And so these are big issues, not just at the individual level. They are issues at the societal level. And they're issues around which we must engage our governments, because decisions like which kind of software to use through our education system are taken by our governments. They're paid for by our taxes. And we are here sitting passively, and you know, I am a feminist, and in the feminist discourse, we use the expression agency. Do we have agency? Are we able to take back the control? And I strongly believe that we can. Of course, as a member of the governing board of IITE, we are 100% behind the work of IITE. The work that is being done in Moscow now, I hope that all of you will pay attention to it and you will learn from it and see how you can apply it in your countries. This is the UN, and all of us have, as member states, we have signed up to certain principles. And I am very proud also to be the president of IFAP, which UNESCO's Information for All program, which also underlines these issues. So now, this is really a call for action from you. I am not Asian. I love Bangkok. So I was very pleased when I heard that the AMIC meeting was taking place in beautiful Bangkok. But those of us who are not Asian, we recognize that the immediate future belongs to Asia. And it is in Asia that the new population that is starting to use the internet can be located, particularly in India. We estimate that about 1 million new people start using the internet each day. Many of those people are too poor to start using a smartphone, but their dream is to graduate to using a smartphone. When we think about the issues we've been discussing over the past 2 days, in terms of culture that is affected, in terms of mind that is affected, you can imagine those people are going in to this new environment with no skills. They have been given no tools for them to understand exactly what they are getting into. You are a very educated audience. Many of you are at university level. You're professional communicators. But some of the issues that Tatiana and Mohammed have been discussing were new to you. So you imagine if you are a rural woman, getting your first phone, starting to use a smartphone, and then you see headlines I mean, I don't want to discuss too much, but we know what happened. Let's even just take Sri Lanka. What happened in Sri Lanka recently, where people were manipulating social media to create social unrest by knowing how to put a headline. They know how to write the headline in such a way that people will go and kill other people. We need to work in this area. And so I want to remind you that there are things that we could have been doing that we haven't been doing, and that there are new things that we must start doing. So first of all, listening to all of you, I think that you have the tools to really start doing a better monitoring of the impact of technology on society. There is not enough research going on here, and there isn't enough independent research. We find that many of our technology programs are actually assessed by those who are implementing them. We need independent researchers like you that will be looking at these things in depth. Apart from monitoring and evaluation and research, what happens when you get the results of that research? How do you do the dissemination so that society can actually learn from them? You know, there's no other group which is better equipped than those who are in the room. People from academia, people with a background in communications. But I'll be frank with you. Listening to some of the discussions, it is as if you have allowed your power to be taken from you. That those of you in the field of communications have ceded the field to those who are just technologists. But it's a technology which is a tool for communication. You are the ones who must be at the forefront in doing the kind of evaluations that we need and disseminating the results in an effective way so that people have enough information to take a decision about which kind of technology that they want for their society. And for instance, we have been discussing about these mind control technologies. We can take a decision as parents, as adult users, as citizens, that we do not want to see that kind of technology in our homes or in our classrooms. Our governments are putting out platforms. These platforms use artificial intelligence in ways in which could be detrimental to the long-term interest of society. We do not need it to be, how can I put it, a demonstration. We need it to be a discussion. We need it to be a dialogue and a discourse, something that systematically we base on looking at the potential impact for society. So somebody has to do the analysis. And this is what I'm calling on you to do. I was just telling my colleagues that I'm getting a little tired now because for the past 6 weeks, I've been on the road. And the beginning of this trip was in Argentina, where I addressed the International Federation of Library Associations. And I told them that libraries have a very valuable role to play in this, because they're locations where people can gather and they can discuss and they can come out with, you know, recommendations. So the thing is that, first of all, I think my time is coming up, so let me get to the recommendations. To remind you first that there are certain principles that we have agreed on within the framework of the UN. So what I'm saying here is only confirming what we have agreed on as member states, the kind of society we want. We want peaceful societies where people can be, in French we say épanoui, they can have the freedom to live their lives. We do not want to be controlled by anything, whether it is another human being or it is a technology. And so for the first thing I want to say is I like to be practical. I want AMIC, time? Yeah. AMIC has to develop a MOOC, some kind of distance learning tool that will inform its membership of these issues in a very systematic way. And you can have it at different levels. You can have it at the professional level, and then you can support your membership so they know how to address these issues within the home and with their community and with their children and with their relatives, because this is a societal issue. So I really hope that AMIC will take up that challenge. The other thing that I would like you to do is to help me and to help Tatiana, because we need to develop a set of indicators that will help us to know whether or not we have the kind of understanding that we need as we move towards this very nebulous and uncertain digital future. And the main thing is that as we get the indicators, we will do the research, but we have to understand that in the long term, what we are doing is really an adaptive management of the technology. We are moving away from the perception that a company develops a solution, and the solution provides a need. It handles one of my needs, to understanding that the profit motive behind the design of technology could lead us down what's in some of my papers I've called a slippery slope to a situation where we lose our humanity. And I think all of us agree that is not what we want. So I hope that you will support me and you will support the UN in being able to actually meet this challenge. This is perhaps the greatest challenge we have faced as human beings. It's not an external challenge. It is a challenge that is coming from within, but we have not managed well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dorothy, for the inspiring and activating message. We have one more speaker before we open the comments and discussions. If I invite Yuri Cherny from Moscow State University of Pedagogy and also Academy of Sciences in Russia. So we are very anxious to hear your views, even though the language is not Russian here, but we use the English. Thank you very much. Пожалуйста.
Dear colleagues, my presentation is called Media Education in the Age of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Russian Approach. First of all, I would like to thank UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education and personally its director Tao Zhang and the program specialist Tatiana Muravana for an opportunity to visit Thailand and participate in this remarkable conference. I also thank the chairman of the board of directors of the Asian Media Information and Communication Center, Mr. Crispin C. Maslog, the AMIC Secretary General Ramon R. Tuazon, and colleagues from hospitable Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok. I'm so glad to notice the fact that the subject of the conference corresponds with the direction of theoretical research and practical activities which I have been pursuing for the last 3 years. Further, I would like to tell you about some initiatives in which I'm taking part and about the approach to advance the media and information literacy, which has been developed and implemented at the main pedagogical university of Russia, the Moscow Pedagogical State University. In 2016, in the article called "The Archives, Libraries and Museums in a Global Information Environment," I offered a theoretical model of transformation of the social memory of the mankind from a society before the advent of writing into our times and further till the year 2040. Having studied the results of scientific research, forecasts and plans of scientific and technical development allowed me to draw a conclusion that after 2030, the great value will be gained by technology of neurocommunication. Thanks to it, we will be able to share each other's feelings and thoughts on the global network and being able to communicate not only without writing, but also without speech. In a broad sense, this process can be presented as a movement to the global brain, when the brains of humans connected to the internet will constitute a basis for the formation of collective intelligence of the mankind. Nevertheless, in the year of 2016, there was one unresolved problem related to what will occur between the present and the year of 2030. To build the bridge between the present and future, I used the book The Fourth Industrial Revolution by Klaus Schwab. If the list of technological trends is known, then our idea of the future has a certain structure. In turn, it allows us to argue on the future reasonably. The main thing is not to be afraid to look forward, to trust our own thoughts and try to find in them a point of support. In 2017, a number of network projects emerged. We began with education of librarians in the field of technologies of the Fourth Industrial Revolution to help them find new conceptual base for reforming libraries in the post-writing society. The cycle of materials on Facebook under the name of the Alphabet of New Technologies was published in some of the most popular Russian professional library magazines, Modern Library. This has become the first such project. The cycle proceeded on for 5 months, becoming a basis for the new Alphabet of New Technologies section in the print version of the magazine that opened in 2018. Then the cycle of the articles has become a basis for a series of the all-Russian webinars under the name The Alphabet of Digital Economy, under the auspices of the Russian Society Znania, Knowledge. It is the biggest educational non-governmental organization in Russia and correspondence school of the Moscow Engineering Physics Institutes. Cooperation with the centralized library system of the Northwestern Administrative District of Moscow has become one more direction of education in the sphere of the digital future. In the summer of 2017, on the basis of library number 240, the scientific and educational technoscience project was created. I am a curator of this project. The usual standard regional library found the individuality having become the center of education in the field of the digital future and new technologies. Since September 2017, along with researchers in the Russian Academy of Sciences, I'm working also as the associate professor of the Department of Media Education in the Institute of Journalism, Communications and Media Education of the Moscow Pedagogical State University. One of the areas of work of the department is the subject of media education in the age of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. In the theoretical plan, we rely on the ideas of the Toronto School of Communications presented by Harold Innis, Marshall McLuhan, and Walter Ong. We consider the ideas of the Toronto School to have a huge potential both for the West and for the East in respect of the awareness of structure and the dynamics of the changes and in the context of the global historical process in a whole. Also, the department's own media theory is being developed, which has received the name of the total media theory. On the practical level, the scope of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the competences of media and information literacy connected with these technologies actively is being entered into the process of training undergraduates of the professional development of teachers of high schools and the teachers of the Moscow Pedagogical State University. Thus, we cover the three key audiences: future teachers, the practicing teachers, and those engaged in vocational training of future teachers. In my opinion, the theory and practice of media education has to be updated and brought into accord with the changed reality today. I would like to offer for discussion three following possible principles of media education in the age of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. These are, first, change of a mental set, second, theoretical knowledge, and third, practical competences. The change of a mental set means that each person has to recognize and understand for himself that the stable media environment does not exist anymore. Everything started moving. Moreover, it develops with acceleration. With such awareness, it is difficult to leave. Its creation demands skills, but it is all the same on today's agenda. In turn, the theoretical knowledge means that each person has to create the developing image of the media environment of the future, adaptable to the human consciousness, and to participate actively in its formation of values. For this purpose, the Fourth Industrial Revolution needs to understand deep meanings both in general and concrete technologies. At last, the practical competences mean that the person has to be able really to do something. For example, manage information flows on Facebook or in the Instagram. At the same time, it is important to emphasize that practical competences in a new era more and more gain only supportive character as the media reality change all too quickly. In conclusion of my report, I would like to return to thoughts of the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, and once again to quote him on our collective responsibility for the future of the planet. We need to shape a future that works for all of us by putting people first and empowering them. In its most pessimistic, dehumanized form, the Fourth Industrial Revolution may indeed have the potential to robotize humanity and thus to deprive us of our heart and soul. But as a complement to the best parts of human nature, creativity, empathy, stewardship. It can also lift humanity into a new collective and moral consciousness based on a shared sense of destiny. It is incumbent on us all to make sure that latter prevails. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Yuris. Spasibo большое. It was very interesting report from Russia. Now we have time. Actually, I don't know how much, but we have some time. And I promised that if there are questions or comments from anybody, you can raise your hands. Otherwise, I start commenting myself, which is not the role of moderator, but after all, moderator decides. There's one question at the end, please. Microphone is coming. Oh, it's coming in a minute. It's back there. Sorry, I was
My question is to Dorothy, madam. You have said you would like independent researchers or AMIC should do a MOOC offering its skills. Can you elaborate more specifically for independent researchers what line of input and connection would you want, and would you be able to, give in terms of a mutual relation?
Yes, thanks for the question. There's one of our presenters who was not able to join us here. His name is Alton Grizzle, and he handles media information literacy at UNESCO headquarters. And I think that the comments he asked me to deliver, which I forgot, fit with your question. He's reminded us that we actually have a global alliance for partnerships on MIL. Yes, the GAP MIL. And you can join it. That is very important. And he's given me the link, which I will give to the organizers to share with you. Then he has also reminded us that we have a number of global events already. One of which is the Media Information Literacy Week, which takes place from 24th to 31st of October. And you can organize local events around it and join in the conference, which is organized around it as well. I think that there are so many things that you can do as an independent researcher. But the thing is that you have to, first of all, immediately become more familiar with the body of knowledge here and see how you link to the existing network to design the research in such a way. And one of the things he asked me to say, which is very important, is at the moment, too many researchers are doing research independently of linking up with policymakers. So he's suggesting that as you organize the research, already from the beginning, design in the contacts, the regular connection with the policymakers so that they feel part of the research and they can actually take the recommendations and implement. So all the best to you. Thank you.
Thank you. There is another next person next to the previous speaker. There's another question at the back, please.
Good afternoon. My question is intended for Professor Dorothy ma'am again. Ma'am, as young researchers, like many of us, we often face a lot of international barriers as well. Like for example, if we want to read academic books, like I come from India, so if I need to order an academic book from outside, since most of the academic literature is published from the West, it's not financially feasible for me. So what exactly do you think we can do to address this imbalance that way?
Well, I don't have an answer offhand, but I can tell you that UNESCO has been promoting open education resources for a long time. What I am going to do is bring to Alton Grizzle's attention that we want to see perhaps a corpus of literature around this topic that could be made available to researchers. How that, whether or not that will happen, I cannot promise. Thank you.
I will give the floor question here in a minute. Just want to add to the question that luckily UNESCO publications are open access. And this is a great principle we have to support, of the Moscow Institute particularly. So even our works are available free of charge anywhere. So there are two questions in the front. Please, you have a microphone for the gentleman in.
Thank you.
He was first, but you were more active. So take the floor. We go back to you then. This is democracy.
Thank you. I think it's excellent presentations, especially the last two presentations. I just want to second and to add about this MOOC recommendation. I think it is very, very appropriate for AMEC, for instance, to take up the recommendation of Deborah to say that sessions like this should be put into a program that can be distributed through MOOC in the fashion of Coursera or edX. It is very, very appropriate, and that will be giving members something that is of value. Okay, these days membership will need to come with benefits. I think this type of suggestion is very, very important. And also, the importance of psychological input, especially we need to know that most programmers are now being infiltrated by psychology, and in the curriculum, as I mentioned during my plenary, this is not really reflected in the university education system. Thank you.
And give the mic, yes, please. We continue with.
Okay, yeah. I'm calling Seniran. Just a comment about the books he mentioned.
Yes.
Sage India is now publishing a lot of books from Asian writers. And they have, I think, just started an Indian language publication. So maybe you can check with Sage India. Okay, what I want to give an example is somebody mentioned about Sri Lanka just a while ago. And there's something very interesting happening in Sri Lanka right at the moment, which is not being covered by the media internationally or in the region. I have just submitted an article to the South China Morning Post. I hope they publish it this week. Now, what happened, there was this Easter attack. Now, that attack happened at a time when there was a secret agreement being negotiated between the US and the current government to, for American forces to be based in, deployed in Sri Lanka, very similar to Korea and Okinawa. And it's opposed by a lot of people in Sri Lanka, and it's a very secret agreement. And then the attack by so-called Islamic terrorists came, which was very puzzling. And now the thing is, then immediately after that, the president released this monk, who's basically a thug. I'm a Buddhist myself. I say it openly. He's basically a thug in robes. He should not be a monk. And now he was released, pardoned and released. Then he comes out and tries to instigate Buddhists, especially you, who are. Now, next week, the US Secretary of State is coming there. Initially, it was planned to sign the agreement, but I don't think they could sign the agreement unless this week there's a huge riot between Muslims and Sri Lanka and Buddhists in Sri Lanka. And I don't think that's happening because a lot of Buddhist monks and Buddhist leaders have warned the Sri Lankan public not to do that because they will be colonized if they do that. That is not covered anywhere in the international media. What is happening? Though it's covered, it's discussed widely within Sri Lanka because I have been following the Sri Lankan media, especially social media. What is covered is those thug monks, what they make, calling them. Yeah, now,
It has to do with who controls and who curates the information that is available to us.
yeah, so this is the challenge. Even I find UN agencies are not addressing it. This happens in Syria all the time, the chemical attacks. Okay. And now with Iran, the attack on the ship.
Yes.
Now, what can the UNESCO do? Because it's no point just talking about freedom of information when the information is being suppressed and only one side of information is given out. And sometimes I get the feeling UNESCO itself, the information is suppressed by UNESCO itself.
Well, you know, I started my career with another UN agency, UNDP. Now I work with UNESCO. And I can tell you there's one fundamental truth about all UN agencies. We are the reflection of the member states. A UN agency does not have agency in itself. All of our programs are agreed on by member states, and then we implement. So what would need to happen is member states, and we will be going for our general conference in November this year, member states will have to express their desire for the agency to get involved in this area. And I can tell you that, okay, we know that the US has now withdrawn from UNESCO, but I can tell you that they have their proxies, and there will be a huge debate around this. So it is member states. Never imagine that a UN agency decides things for itself. It is always the member states who decide.
I will, over there some question. I will then use my power as a moderator. Please have a...
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the inputs. Apparently, well, it's threatening, it's scary, right? But you're referring to adults who probably have been tracked on Facebook or whatsoever. I'm worried because several of us here have conducted studies pertaining to children. While we say that your MIL is in place, and we can definitely customize it, localize it, because we have different conditions in different parts of Asia, I was wondering if there's something that you can do from the supply end, because the children are so addicted. No matter how, even if you educate parents on how to, let's say, negotiate with the children, educate the children as well. Even if you educate the students, you know, somehow, because it's so addicting, they will find ways, and that's what we found out. Is there a way that AMIC or UNESCO or whatever body for that matter can lobby with the producers to do something about what they're producing? Is it a curtailment of the freedom of expression? But wait, you also have responsibilities, because children are not just exposed to video games that are so full of hatred, vengeance, violence, and sex. Even if you go to what you thought were on YouTube, something maybe educational, they follow cheats, walkthroughs, but pornographic materials pop in. And, well, you're going to say, oh, you're just because you're probably coming from a conservative family or country. But wait, if this is what's happening to the adults, look at what's happening to our younger generation. So my question here is, what can be done? Can we be a pressure group to press these people to produce more responsibly? Thank you.
If you want to respond.
I didn't realize it was even to me, but I can tell you that the first thing that you need to know, and I was shocked when I found this out, that the ownership of the major gaming platforms, we have Tencent, China. It is within Asia. You have the capacity within the Asian regional fora to address that. The big gaming platforms coming out of the US, I was shocked to find who owns majority shares of the biggest one. China, Tencent again. Because you see it's American, but you don't know who are the shareholders. So you have to go into the shareholders. And once you know who are the shareholders, then you can put the pressure on shareholders and say, this is not what we want for our kids. There are many ways, we have so many ways we have resisted things before. So I don't have to teach you how to organize and resist. But I really hope something gets done. And I can also tell you that there's another coalition on child protection online that you should look up and join.
Yes, in addition to this child coalition, I would like to add something that we have been done in United Nations level, UN level. We did something for counterterrorism. So we held those companies accountable for the materials that being spread on Facebook and YouTube and all those things. They are now, most of them are member of the initiative called Tech for Peace, which is very important also to look at. I recommend that UNESCO may go for something like this to address the issues of societal effect and the psychological effect and all those things. Maybe this is a recommendation from also a UN experience. Yeah. Okay.
Well, no.
If you want UNESCO to do something, then you must make sure that the representatives which will be at the governing conference later this year, they have this in their agenda to bring up.
Thank you very much. Now the chair has something to say. I am very modest to be chairing anything in Asia, respecting his history and culture and civilizations of this part of the world. But let me point out the title of this panel. I think I am somehow responsible for it, New Civilizational Dimensions of Media and Information Literacy. And I have been listening very carefully all the presentations during the 3 days and also today, and let me only take one or two observations. I noticed that many of the presentations stressed the role of communication, and I like AMIC is also communication. I remember 5 years ago I was invited to Singapore to the meeting of International Institute of Communications, and they wanted, the president wanted me to speak about communications literacy. So there are a number of things that the language of English makes us a little bit scholarly and theoretically difficult, because the word literacy is an American concept. In Europe, it was confused with literature in many languages, and it took time, 10 years, for us to convince the Europeans that it's a different thing. Literacy is reading, writing, and computing, or calculating. So I think that Asians, and many of you coming from different civilizations, bringing in the communicational dimension might bring us closer to the essence of what we are trying to achieve, not to be fixed with concepts that we now use. We have to use, and we will use this concept definitely, because we have struggled to have it there instead of technological literature, instead of digital literacy, because that was the industry concept in Europe. So the industry pushed forward. The cultural people wanted media literacy. I just wanted to explain and encourage that. Why don't you develop other approaches? And I think we have achieved very much in that dimension. We have some minutes, but I think I don't want to prolong the closing ceremonies, but I want to comment one sentence to my colleague, Mohammed, because I feel so happy to have this panel and even being honored to chair. I watched very carefully your Pavlov's doc examples, and I noticed that there was one visual sign of Santa Claus. Immediately, I'm missing back to the cold weather. So it was an automatic reaction in my mind. Tomorrow I will be in the cold north. Thank you very much. I'm not closing anything, but if there's...
I just want to ask one question.
Please go
My
ahead.
question to Mohammed sir. Hello sir, myself Bhavna Pathak from India. And I'm just working on media literacy information in India and developing some papers, and during that, I just came to know that in US, there are some NGOs like Media Literacy Now, National Association for Media Literacy Education, and they are putting pressure on the government, and in around 10 states of US, they have passed media literacy law. So I really want to know what is that media literacy law, and whether that is going to help the common people, because parenting kids in digital era is really a challenge, especially in Asian Pacific regions, if we say, can you throw some light, what is that media literacy law and how it's going to help common people?
I really don't have answer to your question, especially in regards to literacy law. But I may help in cyber law, maybe. But literacy law, this is I will leave to.
No, I haven't heard of it, so please give me the link, because I think it's a very interesting development, but it tells us that there's a lot we can do to engage with policymakers. And I want to emphasize, because Chair is going to close this, I want to emphasize that Asia, whether it is the owners of the big Asian companies, whether it is the power of your population, Asia has the potential to be in control here. So it isn't as if you can sit back and say, oh no, it's the West. It's not the West. Maybe we can learn from them, but there are many things that can start happening right now on the ground in Asia to make a difference.
Okay.
Thank you.
One more question to you, ma'am. That's like, is UNESCO working on community level as well? Because I think that community media is the real media, or we can say that community media could be an effective tool to disseminate media literacy, because common people are living in various communities, and if we talk about the Asian region, so most of the population is like not literate, and also is UNESCO really working for the community level also, and enhancing the community media as well?
I think that UNESCO doesn't work directly at the community level, but we work with member states to influence the policy which should allow them to do that. And within the framework of the GAP Mill, we have the Smart Cities Initiative. So I think that all of these are useful resources. I'll make sure that the organizers have the links and you can look at it. And the thing is that the UN, as I said, made up of member states. So if you want something to happen, lobby.
Thank you.
I'm hesitant to continue the discussion. We have some ceremonies to close the session. Well, there are many answers. It's a question of media education, but be short. I'm democratic, but be short.
Use state funds to fund activities in schools, media, literacy, instruction, can be using the funds that is allocated from Department of Education, which is local, because funding for education is local. So it can be used in schools to include media literacy in the curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will not open any more discussions. I think we thank the panelists and we applaud them, and we'll proceed to the closing ceremonies in a minute. But first, I think there's some ceremonial thing. Thank you very much. My role is finished.
Thank you.